Okay, so today is more on multiplying decimals. We're going to focus a lot on the base 10. So last time you learned the procedure, and this is more going to show you kind of tricks in between and then reviewing how to procedurally solve them. So we will look at products that are decimals. So you're listening for now. We can use fractions like 1/10 and 1/100 to reason about the location of the decimal point in a product of two decimals. So if you use the example 24 times 0.1, there's several ways that you can find the product. We can interpret 24 groups of 1/10. We can think of it as 24 times 1/10, which is 24 divided by 10. So there's all these different ways that you can look at it. So similarly, we can think of 0.7 and 0.09 as 7/10 and 9/100, and you could write it like what you see. So we can rearrange the whole numbers and the fractions. So that's kind of what you're seeing right there. And this tells us that 0.7 times 0.09 is 0.063. So remember what I taught you last time was these decimal places that are here are going to move your decimal over to the left. So what they're trying to kind of highlight to you, and it looks a little more confusing than it actually is, but if you were to take 7 times 9 and you know what 7 times 9 is, and it's 63, if in your original problem, and that was the original, you had 3 decimal places, you would move your decimal over 1, 2, 3. So your answer would end up being that. So that's kind of what we're going to go over and get practice with today. And remember, that can only happen when it's dealing with base 10. So we're doing lesson 5 and lesson 8, and we're in book 5. So fractionally speaking powers of 10, and you are on page 32 in your book. So we're going to start with this little part. Find each product or quotient. So what's happening here is if you have 250 and you're timesing that by 1/10, what you can technically do is you can just move the decimal over one place. So that 1/10 means to the 10th, right? So what I taught you last time is the decimal sits here, you can move it over 1. So what you would write is 25. Same thing that's going on here. Let's say I had 250 and I needed to do it to the 100th, right? So that's 2 decimal places. So however many zeros you see, that's how many decimal places we're moving. So on this one, 100 is 2 decimal places. So what you can do is if your decimal is right here, you can move it over 2, and your answer would at that point be 2.5. Then if you take 48, well, 48 divided by 10, if you take this here and you just have 48, your decimal place is 10 or 10. So this decimal moves over here, and your answer would be 4.8. Same thing going on here. If you were to divide 48 by 100, this 100 is 2 decimal places. So you would move the decimal over 2 places, 1, 2, and you would get 0.48. So just little tricks that you can do when you're dealing with tenths, hundredths, thousands, anything that's a base 10 is when this will work. Then it says find each product. So kind of the same thing that I was doing. 36 times 1, well, you know that's 36, right? I'm sorry, that should be a 36. Let me rewrite it right here. Okay, so you have 1 decimal place. Move it over 1 decimal place. So your answer is 3.6. So 24.5 times 1 is 245. And your decimal place is 2. You have 1 there and you have 1 there. So you can move it over 1, 2. So your answer is 2.45. Same thing here. 18 times 1, well, that's 18. And your decimal places are 1, 2. So you'll move it over 1, 2. And you should get 0.18. Same over here on D. 54 times 1 is 54. I'm going to write it up here. Well, your decimal places are 1, 2. So move it over 1, 2. And you should get 0.54. And then for your last one, 92 times 1 is 92. And then you need to move your decimal over 1, 2, 3. Now remember, if you don't have a decimal place, you can add a 0. So I go 1, 2, 3. Well, I would add a 0 right there. So your answer would be 0.092. And then we move on again. Remember that this only works with the powers of 10. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're moving forward. So now you're on page 34. It says select all expressions that are equivalent to 0.6 and or times 0.5. And A is 1, so circle that. C is 1, please circle that. F is 1, so please circle that. And G is also 1. So we're going to circle that. Find the value of 0.6 and 0.5. So this is similar to what I did in the very beginning, right? If you know 6 times 5, and that's 30. Well, I can move my decimal over 1, 2. 1, 2, and I would get 0.30. So I don't need to do all of the long math if you understand how decimals work. Okay, let's do a couple more. So you're on page 34 and I'm on number 3. Well, if I know that 3 times 2 is 6, right? Well, if I have 6, I'll rewrite it. And I need to move it over 1, 2, 3 places. So I go 1, 2, 3 places. Remember, if you don't have a place value, you add a 0. So it would be 0.006. Now 7 times 5, you know, is 35. Okay, so I need to move it over 1, 2, 3. So I have 35. I move it over 1, 2, 3, and I get 0.05. So this becomes 0.035. That's the answer. Okay, so now we'll be calculating products. And in these ones, it's not going to work as easy as it has. And it's because the numbers aren't as pretty. That's what I will say about them. So in lesson 8, we're going to do it the way that I taught you last class. We're going to need to work them out. So we will multiply decimals. We will calculate products of decimals, and you turn to page 53. So a common way to find the product of decimals is to calculate the whole numbers and then place the decimal point at the end, right? That's kind of what I've already taught you. They did 25 times 12, and they ended up with 300, right? Well, this is 1 decimal place. This is 2 decimal places. So they moved the decimal over 1, 2, and that's how they got 3.0. So you're just going to kind of write what I haven't read. Just kind of highlight that part on it. There's not much for you to write. And then use the method shown to calculate the product, right? So you have 4.6 times 0.9. Okay, so you know 6 times 9, that's 54. 9 times 4 plus 5 is 41. And then you have your little placeholder. And then 0 times 6 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. Now you add 4, 1, 4. Now in your original problem, you have 1 space, 2 space. So 1, 2. Your answer would be 4.14. Now our next one, we have 16.5 times 0.7. So 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 6 plus 3 is 45. 7 plus 4 is 11. And then your placeholder. So now 0 times 5, 0 times 6, 0 times 1, and I add. In your original problem, you had 2 places, so I go over 1, 2. So your answer is 11.55. Okay, so now you're going to move on to page 54, and we will practice multiplication of decimals. Calculate each product and show your reasoning. So the first one, we'll just practice again. 5.6 times 1.8. 6 times 8 is 48. 5 times 8 plus 4 is 44. Have your place value, your placeholder. And then 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 5 is 5. And then I get 10.08. Your original problem has 2 places. Move it over 2, and you get 10.08 for that one. And then our last one. So we have 0.008 times 7.2. Remember, you don't line up the decimal. All you do at the end is count the decimal places. So 8 times 2 is 16. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1. And then you have 0, placeholder. Then you have 7 times 8, that's your 56. And then 7 times 6, 42 plus the 5. So you get 5 here, and then you get 0, 0. And then I have 6, and then I have 7, and then I have 5, 0, 0. Now my decimal places are 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 0.0576. Okay, so you're going to go back to the meet, turn in your notes, and we'll start practicing this.